The shocking truth about my neighbor's relationship exposed. Hey Reddit, first time posting from my throwaway, because honestly, I still can't believe this is my life right now. For context, I, 34F, live in a row of tidy townhouses, the kind with matching mailboxes and neighbors who nod at each other but mostly keep to themselves. Or so I thought. My neighbors, the nice couple, moved in 2 years ago. I'll call them Mark and Emily. Mark's an accountant, always out the door by 7 a.m. Tie straight, shoes shined. Emily works from home, a freelance writer, I think, though she rarely talks about it. At first, I thought they were the picture of suburban bliss. Joint yard sales, matching Halloween costumes, Mark always waving as he took the trash out. Emily brought cookies at Christmas and checked on my plants when I was away. No kids, but lots of laughter drifting through open windows on summer nights. If I'm honest, I was a little jealous. My own relationship history is a disaster, so seeing them so stable made me wonder what I was missing. But then, little things started to feel off. Sometimes, late at night, I'd hear shouting, quick, muffled, and then the sound of Mark's car peeling away. Or Emily would show up to the mailbox in sunglasses, even on cloudy days, and flinch if someone called her name too loud. I told myself not to pry. Everyone has rough patches, right? Still, the weirdness piled up. Packages would arrive and disappear from their porch before noon. Mark's sister once cornered me at a block party and asked if I'd seen Emily that week. She's been distant lately, she said, voice lowered. I shrugged it off, not wanting to gossip. But in hindsight, I can't help but wonder if those little signs were warning shots, if the truth was always bubbling just beneath the surface. And if I'd been braver, maybe someone would have seen what was coming next. I wish I'd trusted my gut. Because nothing could have prepared me for the day everything changed. For a while, I convinced myself it was none of my business. But it got harder to ignore. Mark and Emily's house was just one thin wall away from mine, so I noticed more than I wanted. Their arguments grew more frequent. Sometimes it was just muffled voices. Other nights Mark would slam the back door and leave, engine roaring down the street. Sometimes he didn't come back until dawn. Emily, on the other hand, became a ghost. I'd catch glimpses of her in the mornings, shuffling out to the mailbox in pajama pants and a hoodie, sunglasses on even if the sun hadn't risen. She started canceling neighborhood plans, book club, coffee runs, even her beloved garden club meetings. I asked if she was okay once, and she smiled too quickly, said she was just slammed with deadlines. But her hands trembled as she spoke. Then there was the issue with the packages. I started noticing more deliveries, and not just the usual Amazon boxes. Big, nondescript parcels, sometimes several in a week. They'd be whisked inside before I could even wave hello. Mark used to joke about Emily's online shopping problem, but now he seemed tense, almost paranoid. He'd peer through the blinds at anyone passing by, even me, like he was waiting for something or someone. It was around this time that neighbors started talking. Quietly, of course. Mrs. Green from 2 doors down mentioned Emily's new friend, a man she'd seen coming and going in the afternoons when Mark was at work. Probably just a colleague, I said, feeling uncomfortable defending someone I barely knew. But after that, I started watching more closely. The final straw came one rainy Thursday. I was coming home early from work, arms full of groceries, when I heard shouting from their open upstairs window. I couldn't make out every word, but I caught Mark's voice, tight and angry. You think I don't know? And Emily's, pleading, please, not now. He'll hear us. I froze in my driveway, heart pounding. For a second, I considered knocking on the door just to check in, but the thought of crossing that line scared me. That night, as I lay in bed, the house too quiet, I realized I was both worried for Emily and deeply uneasy. Something was very wrong next door. And I was starting to feel that whatever it was, I wouldn't be able to ignore it much longer. A week after that rainy Thursday, my uneasy curiosity tipped into something else, something like dread. I woke early on Saturday, intending to get a jump on errands, and glanced out the window as I sipped my coffee. That's when I saw Emily in her backyard, talking in hushed, frantic tones to a man I'd never seen before. He was tall, clean-shaven, dressed like he belonged in a boardroom, not a suburban yard at 7 a.m. Their body language was desperate. She kept wringing her hands. He kept glancing nervously at the house. A few minutes later, Mark's car pulled up earlier than usual. Emily's face went white. The man squeezed her shoulder and slipped out the side gate, vanishing so quickly I might have doubted I'd seen him at all. Emily ducked back inside, shoulders hunched. I told myself to let it go. I tried to really. But that night, the noises started again. Shouting, banging. Then, suddenly, the unmistakable sound of something shattering. I pressed my ear to the wall, heart pounding. I could make out Mark's voice, sharp and cold. "You lied to me." Again, Emily sobbed, pleading for him to listen. I heard her say, "It was never about him. I just needed help." Unable to sleep, I got up and paced. That's when a new sound jolted me. A door creaking open, hurried footsteps in the hall. I peered through my peephole and saw Emily, barefoot, clutching a duffel bag, slipping out her front door in the middle of the night. She looked around, saw no one, and ran across the street to that same man's waiting car. I watched, frozen by the window, as the car sped off. 5 minutes later, Mark came out onto his porch, scanning the street with a look that was equal parts panic and rage. He pulled out his phone and started dialing, but stopped abruptly, sinking onto the steps with his head in his hands. I felt sick, guilty for witnessing this, terrified for Emily, angry at Mark, confused by what I'd seen. That image, Emily running into the night, Mark crumpled and alone, haunted me. The picture-perfect couple next door had finally shattered, and I realized I was right in the middle of it, whether I wanted to be or not. After that sleepless night, I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd crossed some invisible line, no longer just a neighbor, but a silent witness to a drama I hadn't signed up for. The next morning, I expected Mark and Emily's house to be swarming with police, or at least flashing lights and gossiping neighbors. But everything was eerily normal. Mark's car was gone, blinds drawn. No sign of Emily. I kept replaying everything I'd seen, wondering if I should call someone, Emily's family, the police. But what would I even say? That I'd seen her run to a car in the dark and overheard arguments? I'd have to admit I'd been eavesdropping, spying, weaving together rumors and fragments. Later that afternoon, I went to take out my trash and bumped into Mrs. Green. She gave me that look, the one neighbors reserve for moments when they're hoping you know something juicy. "Have you seen Emily?" Poor thing, she looked so pale last week. I hesitated. "Not lately. Everything okay over there?" She pursed her lips. "I don't like the way Mark's been acting. Heard shouting. And strange men coming by. Never seen them before. You know, I always thought they were too perfect." She shook her head, then leaned in. "If you hear anything, let me know." I spent the rest of the day piecing things together, replaying odd little moments. The bruises I'd noticed on Emily's arms last summer that she'd shrugged off as gardening accidents. The way Mark always seemed to know exactly where she was, who she'd talked to, what deliveries arrived. I remembered the times she'd offered to help at community events, only to cancel last minute because Mark needed the car. The more I thought, the clearer it became that Emily's life had become a series of careful, fearful calculations. But was Mark dangerous? Was the other man helping her? Or was he part of something worse? Driven by guilt and concern, I finally sent Emily a text. "Hey, just checking in. If you need anything, I'm here." The message hung unread for days. I started losing sleep. My nerves shot every time I heard a car pull up. I knew I couldn't keep pretending nothing was wrong. If Emily came back, I needed to be ready. And if she didn't, I owed her at least my attention, if not my courage. It was 4 days before I saw Emily again. The neighborhood had started to buzz, people whispering over fences, glancing up every time a car slowed on our street. I half expected her to return in the dead of night, but instead, she walked up the drive on a sunny afternoon, shoulders back, head high. The whole street seemed to pause. Mark's car was in the driveway. Emily's face was set with a strange calm, the kind that only comes after making an impossible decision. I stood frozen at my window, torn between going outside or giving her privacy. But before I could move, the front door flew open. Mark stormed out, voice raised for the entire block to hear. "Where the hell have you been?" His anger was wild, but there was panic behind it. Emily didn't flinch. "We need to talk. Now." Inside, he looked around, realizing people were watching. He hissed something under his breath and yanked her inside, slamming the door. The blinds fluttered. I caught Mrs. Green's eye. She was standing on her porch, phone in hand, expression grim. I tried to mind my business, but then came the shouting. Mark's voice, loud and furious. Emily's, steady and unwavering. Then, silence. Moments later, the door slammed again. Emily stood on the porch, Mark behind her, his face ashen. She spoke loudly, clear enough for the whole street. I'm leaving, Mark. I know about the money. I know about the threats. And I know I deserve better than this. The neighborhood fell utterly silent. Mark staggered back, eyes wide. You can't just. She shook her head. Watch me. It all spilled out, right there on the porch. Emily exposed everything. The financial control, the tracking of her phone, the emotional blackmail. Mark tried to talk over her, but she didn't let him. By then, half the street was outside, pretending to water plants or get mail, but really hanging on every word. Finally, Emily turned to face us all. Her voice cracked, but she stood tall. I'm not coming back. And if anyone here ever feels trapped, please, reach out. You don't have to go through it alone. Mark looked utterly defeated. The show was over, but the real story had just begun. After Emily's words echoed down our street, it was like time stopped. Mark retreated into the house, slamming the door with a finality that said, "Do not follow." Emily stayed on the porch a minute longer, shoulders shaking. But then her mystery friend's car pulled up, and she got in without looking back. The engine barely made a sound, but the silence left behind was deafening. No one knew what to do. Neighbors lingered on their lawns, watering already drenched flower beds, pretending to check their mail for the 5th time that day. Some shot Mark's house dirty looks. A few whispered into their phones, already spreading the story. Mrs. Green hovered near her gate, hands pressed to her mouth, eyes full of tears. I went inside and paced, heart hammering. Part of me wanted to comfort Emily, to say something, anything, that would make it better, but she was gone. The other part was furious at Mark, at myself for never saying more, at all the signs I'd brushed aside. I kept replaying her last words in my mind. You don't have to go through it alone. I wondered how long she'd been rehearsing that speech, and what it had cost her to deliver it in public. That night, our street felt changed. Someone left a casserole on Emily's porch, even though she wouldn't come back to eat it. Mark's lights stayed off. On the neighborhood group chat, the messages ranged from sympathy, praying for you, Emily, to pointed questions. Did anyone else notice Mark always watching her? One neighbor wrote, I wish I'd paid more attention. I lay awake, grappling with my own guilt. Was I just a bystander, another set of eyes watching from behind a curtain? Should I have knocked on her door sooner, or called someone when the shouting started? Regret gnawed at me, but so did relief that Emily had gotten out. In the days that followed, everything shifted. Mrs. Green organized a support circle for anyone feeling isolated or unsafe. I attended, more to listen than to speak, but it was strangely comforting. We shared coffee, awkward silences, and slow admissions of the things we'd each noticed but never dared discuss. The neighborhood had always seemed polite, even close, but now the cracks showed. Some blamed Mark. Others insisted it wasn't their place to intervene. Friendships strained, alliances shifted, and I realized that secrets have a way of binding people together and tearing them apart, long after they come to light. I couldn't stop thinking about Emily. Was she okay? Would she start over somewhere else? I sent another message, hoping she'd see it, telling her she was brave and not alone. I didn't get a reply, but maybe it helped just the same. And as the street tried to return to normal, I promised myself. Next time, I wouldn't wait so long to speak up. The next few days blurred together, the street buzzing with a new kind of energy. Mark mostly disappeared. His car stayed parked, curtains drawn tight. I heard rumors he might move out, and honestly, no one seemed eager to stop him. The support group Mrs. Green started grew surprisingly fast. People who'd never said more than a passing hello suddenly opened up about their own worries. Arguments behind closed doors, strange bruises, late-night confessions. It was like Emily's courage had broken a dam. A couple of us decided to check in on other neighbors, just to make sure no one else was struggling in silence. I found myself on doorsteps I'd never visited before, carrying cookies and awkward smiles, just trying to let people know they weren't alone. It felt strange at first, too personal, maybe even nosy, but the gratitude in people's eyes told me it mattered. I helped Mrs. Green print flyers with the names of local support hotlines and left them in mailboxes. We encouraged each other to look out for signs of distress and to trust our instincts more. I even started volunteering with a local domestic violence helpline, needing to do something real, not just watch from behind the curtains. Sometimes, I'd spot Emily's friend driving by. Once, he stopped, rolled down the window, and thanked me for being kind. "She's safe now," he said quietly. "That means everything." The relief was real, but so was the bittersweet regret. For all the time Emily spent afraid, and for all the moments we didn't reach out sooner. The shock was fading, but the need for action lingered. Our block would never be the same. But maybe, just maybe, we'd learned how to take care of each other, no matter what secrets might still be hiding behind our quiet doors. The weeks rolled on, and slowly the street settled into a new rhythm. The support circle became a regular thing. Sometimes just coffee and cake, other times deep, tearful talks that went late into the evening. People showed up for each other in ways I'd never seen before. We started sharing spare keys, dog walking schedules, even babysitting duties. What used to be polite distance became cautious, genuine connection. Mark's house, though, became a kind of symbol. Some people left notes on his door, messages of anger, support, or confusion. Others kept their distance, crossing the street rather than risk a run-in. One neighbor organized a meal train, just in case Mark wanted company, but I never saw him accept. Eventually, a for sale sign went up in the yard. When movers arrived, hardly anyone came out to watch. Emily's absence was felt in small ways. Her garden, once bright with sunflowers and tomatoes, started to wilt. Someone, maybe Mrs. Green, began watering the beds, as if hoping she might return. Kids on bikes stopped in front of her house, talking in hushed voices, curious and sad. The block party committee set out a card for Emily. "Thank you for your kindness. You'll always have friends here." There were moments of awkwardness, too. Some neighbors felt guilty for not noticing sooner. Others argued about whether it was right to get involved at all. But mostly, I saw people learning how to check in, how to offer help without prying, how to read the subtle signs that someone might need more than just a smile and a wave. As for me, I felt different too. I realized the old comfort of keeping to myself had been a kind of shield. Now, I was determined to stay open, even if it meant being vulnerable or risking the discomfort of getting involved. Our community wasn't perfect, but it was healing. And I knew, deep down, that we would never be the kind of neighborhood to look away again. Months passed, and slowly the street found its footing again. Mark's house sold quickly. The new owners, a young couple with a rescue dog, moved in quietly, bringing new life and cautious curiosity. No one talked about Mark much, but the lesson lingered. Appearances are never the whole story. Emily never came back, but sometimes Mrs. Green would get postcards. Photos of mountain trails or city parks, always signed simply E. She read them aloud at our meetings, and we all felt a little lighter, knowing Emily was somewhere building a safer, happier life. The support group faded into something less formal, but more enduring, real friendships. I'd find cookies on my porch or a handwritten note after a tough week. There were new traditions too, Sunday potlucks, walking groups, late-night texts that started with "You up?" and led to long, honest conversations on the porch. But not everything healed perfectly. Some neighbors stayed wary, reluctant to share or revisit old wounds. There were still arguments about privacy, about how much to get involved. But the silence, the kind that let Emily suffer alone, was gone. We were all a little braver, a little kinder, even if we stumbled sometimes. For me, the biggest change was in how I saw myself. I learned that courage isn't always loud or dramatic. Sometimes it's just asking a quiet question or not looking away when you sense someone's in pain. I found meaning in the smallest acts: a cup of tea, a listening ear, a promise to knock if the light stayed off too long. In the end, Emily's story changed all of us. It made us look at each other and ourselves with new eyes. And for the first time, our neighborhood felt not just safe, but truly connected. Looking back, I realized Emily's story was a wake-up call for our whole street. And for me personally, it's easy to tell yourself it's not your place to get involved, or that everything is fine behind closed doors. But sometimes, just reaching out or paying attention can make all the difference. If you ever sense something is wrong with a neighbor, friend, or even a stranger, trust your instincts. Ask questions, offer support, Don't wait for someone else to step in. It doesn't have to be dramatic, just as simple. I'm here if you need anything, can open a door. I'm grateful for the community we became, and for the lesson that kindness, vigilance, and a little courage go further than you think. If you're reading this and see the signs, don't ignore them. You might be the lifeline someone needs. Thanks for reading, Reddit. Stay safe, stay kind, and look out for each other.